So, you've tried lavender candles, whale noises, and even counting sheep until the sheep started charging rent. Still awake? Perfect. Because tonight, we're not chasing sweet dreams. We're sliding into the gentle, strangely cozy abyss of nihilist philosophy. Yes, nihilism. That charming worldview that whispers, nothing matters, the universe doesn't care, and your morning emails are even less significant than you feared. Comforting, right? Don't worry. I'll keep my voice soothing, like a late-night barista who knows you can't handle caffeine, but insists on telling you about Friedrich Nietzsche anyway. Now, you might be thinking, wait, if nothing matters, why am I listening to this video? And that's the beauty of it. In nihilism, even asking that question is optional. You're free to listen, or free to fall asleep, or free to both, which would make you the Schrodinger's cat of bedtime philosophy. As we drift together through the pages of meaninglessness, you'll find a surprising truth. Nihilism can actually be cozy, like wrapping yourself in a blanket and realizing that since life has no predetermined purpose, you don't have to finish that laundry pile. Existence itself just hit the cosmic snooze button, so let's tuck ourselves in. Tonight, Nietzsche, Dostoevsky, and a few other gloomy geniuses will be your bedtime storytellers. Don't worry, I'll sprinkle in humor. Because even if the universe is indifferent, a good joke still feels better than a bad one. Close your eyes. Exhale. Let's wander together into the soft, dark meadow of nothingness. Close your eyes. Imagine the night itself leaning down to tuck you in. The air is a little heavier now, not in an uncomfortable way, but the way a thick velvet curtain feels when it's pulled across a stage. You're no longer sitting in the harsh light of the day, with its demands and its blaring car horns, and that email that still begins with, "Per my last message." You are in the soft theater of the universe, and the curtain of nothingness is gliding shut around you. That word, nothingness, might sound intimidating at first. It sounds like the kind of thing you don't want under your bed. But don't worry, this isn't the screaming void of cosmic despair, brand of nothingness. This is the softer kind. Think of it as the philosophical equivalent of a weighted blanket, heavy, inescapable, but strangely comforting, once you surrender to it. The philosophers who obsessed over this velvet curtain, people like Friedrich Nietzsche, Fyodor Dostoevsky, and Albert Camus, spent a lot of their time pacing around, frowning, and writing about how life doesn't come with a built-in manual. They looked at existence and said, "Ah, I see. It's blank." Imagine buying a box of IKEA furniture called life, opening it up, and realizing there are no instructions, just some planks, a bag of screws, and a sticky note that says, "Good luck." That's nihilism in a nutshell. But here's the secret. That blankness is not necessarily a tragedy. Sure, there's no cosmic IKEA customer support line you can call, but it also means you can arrange those planks however you want. The velvet curtain of nothingness doesn't close to imprison you. It closes to block out the harsh glare of fluorescent cosmic certainty, giving you the freedom to finally relax. Let's take it step by step. First, the curtain of nothingness reminds us that there is no final judge keeping score of your productivity, your career achievements, or whether you flossed enough this week. You can stop performing for some cosmic audience. You can let go of the voice in your head that insists you must accomplish something eternally significant before you die. You don't. You can breathe. You can stretch. You can put on those socks with the silly pattern, because no eternal being is going to confiscate them. Second, the curtain lets you off the hook. If life had an official meaning, you might feel obligated to chase it down, catch it, and carry it on your back like a particularly needy golden retriever. But nihilism whispers, relax. No such dog exists. Sit down. Take your shoes off. The universe doesn't require you to win anything. That silence, the absence of cosmic orders, can be soothing. Like the quiet that settles after a neighbor's lawnmower finally sputters and dies. And third, the velvet curtain creates intimacy. Think about it. Every human being who has ever lived eventually confronts this same curtain. Kings, farmers, influencers who post about their matcha routines, everyone. It's democratic in its indifference. The curtain doesn't care if you were Caesar or Steve from the sandwich shop. It falls evenly for all of us. And isn't there something cozy in knowing you're wrapped in the same darkness that cradled every ancestor, every friend, every stranger who has ever struggled with the same questions? The philosophers didn't always describe it as cozy. Nietzsche called life a terrifying abyss. But he also insisted we could dance on the edge of it. Dostoevsky described the crushing weight of existence. But he also wrote about characters who discovered compassion precisely because of their suffering. And Camus, with a sly grin, told us to imagine Sisyphus, yes, the man cursed to push a boulder up a hill, forever as happy. Why? Because in acknowledging the futility of it all, he found freedom. And that's what this curtain is. A backdrop against which you're free to doze, to dream, to drift. You don't have to keep replaying the day. You don't have to solve the puzzle of your life tonight. There is no puzzle. That's the joke. And also, the relief. So, as the curtain of nothingness sways, imagine its folds brushing past you, cool and dark, like the soft drape of night itself. You are behind it now, safe from the stage lights. Whatever script the world handed you, be ambitious, be successful, be impressive, that script has slipped to the floor. You don't have to perform. You don't even have to stay awake. Just breathe and let the silence of the curtain do the work. Now that you're getting comfortable behind that velvet curtain, let me introduce you to your new roommate. His name is Nihilism. He's not flashy. He doesn't wear cologne. He shows up in sweatpants, shrugs a lot, and usually forgets to do the dishes. But he's oddly comforting once you get used to him. Picture him standing in your doorway. Not ominous, more like the kind of person who's just realized there's free pizza. He looks around your room and says, "Hey, you know nothing really matters, right?" And you, half asleep, might respond, "Excuse me? I was about to dream about croissants," but he insists. Seriously, nothing matters. Isn't that kind of freeing? Mr. Nihilism has a dry sense of humor. He'll never win Roommate of the Year. But he doesn't pressure you to be anyone else. He doesn't tape passive-aggressive notes to the fridge. Instead, he leans back on the couch and mutters, "Don't stress. The universe doesn't grade on a curve." At first, his presence can feel unnerving. He's the kind of roommate who turns down the lights and says, "You know, we're all just temporary arrangements of atoms, hanging out until entropy kicks us out of the party." But then, after you get over the initial shock, you realize he's actually trying to comfort you. Because if it's all just atoms and entropy, then you're not behind schedule. You're not late to some cosmic appointment. You're exactly where you're supposed to be. In bed, breathing, existing. He has quirks, of course. Mr. Nihilism eats cereal at 2 a.m. and never bothers with a spoon. He just drinks it straight from the bowl. He once painted over a motivational poster with the words, "Hang in there," or "Don't." And yet, somehow, he makes you laugh. Because he's telling the truth in a way no one else dares. The philosophers who brought him into existence, Nietzsche, Kierkegaard, Camus. Each gave him a slightly different personality. Nietzsche's version of him is wild-eyed, muttering about eternal recurrence and daring you to say yes to life, even though it's a mess. Camus' version is calmer, with a French accent, sipping coffee while saying, "You must imagine Sisyphus happy, mon ami." Kierkegaard's version of him wears black, sighs dramatically, and insists faith is the only way out. But regardless of his wardrobe choices, Mr. Nihilism always circles back to the same point. The world doesn't come with built-in meaning. And you, dear listener, don't need to panic about that. Think of him as that friend who never lies to you. The one who, when you ask, "Do these pants make me look existentially adrift?" replies, "Yes, but that's okay. We all are." He doesn't sugarcoat things, but somehow his honesty becomes a lullaby. Because once you stop pretending everything has a cosmic purpose, you can finally unclench. You can relax into the small, immediate pleasures. The sound of your breath, the warmth of your blanket, the absurd comedy of a planet spinning endlessly in space while you drift off to sleep. Mr. Nihilism doesn't demand loyalty. He's not a cult leader. He's more like that guy in college who lived in the dorm basement, always available for a late-night conversation about the universe. Never judgmental if you nodded off halfway through. In fact, he'd probably encourage you to nod off. "Go ahead," he'd say. "Dreams are just absurd movies your brain makes when it's bored. Don't overthink it, so let him sit in the corner of your room tonight. Let him hum softly to himself about the void. He won't keep you awake. He'll keep you company." And as his words settle, you'll notice they don't weigh you down. They lift the burden of needing to figure everything out. Because when your roommate is nihilism, even failure feels less threatening. After all, if nothing matters, you might as well get some rest. Imagine you're lying in bed, the blankets wrapped around you like a cocoon that the universe itself sewed for your comfort. Outside, the world is dark, quiet, humming faintly with distant traffic, and maybe a cricket who hasn't yet realized it's past curfew. And then, just as you begin to drift, a new voice enters the room. It's Friedrich Nietzsche, the German philosopher with the most impressive mustache ever committed to history. Sidling up to your bedside, as if he's just joined a group chat that you didn't know existed, he clears his throat, and in that wonderfully slow, soothing tone, "I'll provide for you," he whispers, "God is dead." Now, at first, that sounds like the worst bedtime story opener in human history. You wanted sheep, maybe a nice tale about a meadow. Instead, you've got Nietzsche leaning over like some philosophical Dracula. But don't panic. Remember, we're here for calm. The way Nietzsche meant, it wasn't some sinister horror movie announcement. It was more like a late-night notification ping. "Hey everyone! Just letting you know. The old system of meaning we've been relying on. Yeah, it doesn't work anymore. Thought you should hear it from me." Soothing. Right? Think of it this way. Nietzsche wasn't gleefully stamping out candles in a cathedral. He was pointing out something he thought humanity had already done to itself. Science, rational thought, cultural shifts, they had all slowly pushed religion out of the center stage of European life. Nietzsche just wrote it down with flair, in a way that ensured people 2 centuries later would still be wide-eyed, whispering, "Did he just say God is dead?" But what's fascinating is the lullaby hidden inside his thunderclap. If the old certainties are gone, Nietzsche suggested, then what happens next is up to us. Instead of sleepwalking through borrowed meanings, maybe we can become wide-awake creators of our own values. He wasn't trying to drag you into despair. He was nudging you toward freedom. A terrifying, exhilarating freedom, but one you can actually drift into like a strange, empowering dream. Picture yourself floating in a dark room. At first, the lack of furniture is disorienting. No table, no chairs, no IKEA manual, nothing. That's what Nietzsche saw when he declared the old foundation gone. But then, you realize, if there's nothing already here, you can arrange the room however you want. You can make the walls glow. You can summon a velvet chaise lounge. You can invent your own cozy corner. Nietzsche called this the chance to become an Übermensch. Not in the Marvel superhero sense, but in the sense of someone who embraces this blank canvas with creativity and courage. Now, let's not forget humor. Imagine Nietzsche in a group chat today, sliding in between emojis and memes, dropping his three-word bomb. God is dead. The typing bubble appears. Someone replies, "Bro, we were just sharing cat pictures." Another chimes in, "Okay, but does this mean brunch is cancelled?" Nietzsche would sigh dramatically, then write a 3-page essay in the chat, while everyone else quietly muted notifications. That's the vibe. But in your room tonight, it's different. He's here to lull you, not lecture you. His voice isn't booming. It's slow and rhythmic, like waves against a shore. He's not demanding you leap up and remake the world this second. He's reminding you that you're not as trapped as you sometimes feel. The walls of expectation, of rules handed down, of obligations carved in stone, they're not eternal. They can be moved, softened, reimagined. You can choose your own lullabies. And here's the paradox. Once you realize there is no absolute meaning, you actually get to rest easier, because you stop worrying about failing at life's ultimate test. There isn't one. There's no cosmic teacher with a red pen grading your performance. Nietzsche, mustache bristling like a philosophical broom, whispers, "You are free to create." And in that freedom, you can let go of the guilt, the pressure, the constant feeling that you're not doing life correctly. So, as you lie there now, breathe in that strange liberation. You don't need to construct an empire of meaning before you fall asleep. You don't have to figure out whether your choices today advanced humanity in a significant way. You just have to acknowledge the old scripts have been shredded, and in the silence left behind, you are allowed to dream. God is dead may sound like a nightmare, but tonight, it's more like a lullaby. A reminder that you can release yourself from the burdens of certainty, float in the mystery, and drift into sleep, not knowing what tomorrow means, and being okay with that. Now imagine you've finally settled, blankets heavy, eyes fluttering. The silence of the night holds you like a cradle. Just when you think you're slipping into dreamland, bang, 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 your cranky neighbor stirs. His name? The Underground Man. Dostoevsky's unforgettable character. And unfortunately for you, he doesn't believe in letting anyone sleep peacefully. He lives downstairs, in a dim, damp apartment that smells faintly of dust and regret. You know he's awake, because you can hear him muttering through the walls. "I am a sick man. I am a spiteful man." That's how he introduces himself. Not exactly the kind of neighbor you want at the block party. But here's the thing. He's not dangerous. He's just endlessly, hilariously self-aware and miserable. Imagine a man who overthinks so much that he can't even order takeout without writing a dissertation about whether it's worth it. The Underground Man is the embodiment of insomnia. He's the human version of that voice in your head that says, "Remember that embarrassing thing you did in 8th grade?" But while most of us feel that occasionally, he lives in it full time. And tonight, in the underground bedroom below yours, he's tossing and turning, loudly analyzing every choice he ever made. Now, as irritating as this sounds, he's actually here to help you fall asleep. Why? Because compared to him, your anxieties seem like gentle breezes, where you might think, I hope tomorrow's meeting goes okay. The underground man is lying there, sweating about the metaphysical consequences of choosing sugar versus cream in his coffee 15 years ago. Listening to him rant is like listening to a storm outside while you're safe inside your own bed. The more he spirals, the more you realize, you don't have to. You can let him take the overthinking shift tonight. He hates freedom, or rather, he's terrified of it. Dostoevsky imagined him as a man who proves that humans, when given the chance to do what's rational and good for themselves, will often do the opposite, just to prove they're not machines. That's why he might stomp around muttering, I know what would make me happy, but watch me sabotage it anyway. It's absurd, but in a way, it's also comforting, because it means we're all a little absurd. And absurdity can be funny. Picture him now, pacing his underground bedroom in worn slippers, scribbling bitter notes about the futility of existence, while also pausing to complain that his radiator hisses too loudly. He's like that one neighbor who leaves passive-aggressive notes in the laundry room. Except his notes are 200-page philosophical novels. But here's where the lullaby sneaks in. The underground man shows you the worst-case scenario of what it looks like to resist life, to analyze until you're paralyzed, to drown in spite. And when you see that, you can decide to step back, sigh, and not follow him into the hole. You can rest. You can say, thank you, neighbor, for showing me what I don't have to do. And then you can close your eyes and drift, while he's still arguing with himself. At 3 a.m, Dostoevsky gave him to us as a warning and a mirror. Yes, we all have a bit of underground man inside us. But instead of fighting him, we can let him rant while we drift into the quiet above. The crankier he gets, the calmer you become. His underground bedroom becomes the lull beneath your lullaby. A reminder that overthinking doesn't solve anything. Sometimes the wisest rebellion is simply falling asleep. Picture this. You walk into a waiting room. The carpet is that muted gray-blue color, designed by someone who thought, what shade would make people feel the least emotions possible? The chairs are lined up stiffly against the wall. There's a faint hum of fluorescent lights above. And on the little table in the middle, stacked with the enthusiasm of a bored receptionist, are magazines that are always at least 5 years out of date. This is existence. At least, that's one way of looking at it. Life, with all its daily routines, its delays, and its quiet absurdities, can feel exactly like sitting in a cosmic waiting room. You're here. You don't entirely know why. You're not sure how long you'll be waiting. And you don't even know who you're waiting for. A doctor? A cosmic manager? Maybe someone who can finally explain why the magazines are all about 2017 celebrity diets. Philosophers have often described human existence in terms of waiting. Jean-Paul Sartre, for instance, talked about the nausea of realizing you're here without instructions. Martin Heidegger said we are beings toward death, which sounds like the worst possible opening line for a Tinder bio. And yet, all of them were circling the same thought. We're in this room together, and we're not quite sure what's supposed to happen next. Now, waiting can feel endless. Remember the DMV? Hours of your life sacrificed just to renew a license. And yet, there's something soothing about acknowledging that waiting is part of the design. Once you accept that existence is a waiting room, you stop looking for the secret trapdoor that will whisk you into the VIP lounge of life. There is no VIP lounge. There are just these chairs, these magazines, and the occasional cough from someone across the room who looks suspiciously like Nietzsche. But don't worry, this waiting room isn't meant to torture you. It's a place where the pressure is off. Think about it. In a waiting room, nobody expects you to be heroic. Nobody expects you to solve the climate crisis or write a best-selling novel right there in the chair. You're just waiting. Your job is to be. You sit, you breathe. You maybe flip through an old National Geographic, and that's it. This is why thinking of life as a waiting room can actually be comforting. If you're waiting, you're excused from the tyranny of productivity. You don't have to optimize your time every second. You can, in fact, just stare at the wall for a while. And the receptionist, who might be the universe itself, isn't going to scold you. Of course, some people in this waiting room get restless. They rearrange the chairs. They demand fresher magazines. They peek behind the receptionist's desk to see if there's a hidden file with their name on it. Others curl up, close their eyes, and nap while they wait, realizing there's no penalty for resting. That's where you come in, right now. As you lie here listening, you're in the most honest form of waiting, the in-between state of wakefulness and sleep. You're not doing. You're not achieving. You're waiting for your dreams to arrive. And the philosophers? They can wait with you. Kierkegaard's probably muttering about dread in the corner. Camus is flipping through a magazine about rock climbing and thinking about Sisyphus. Dostoevsky's scribbling bitter notes about the receptionist's unfair distribution of appointment times. It's a colorful group, but in the end, they're all doing the same thing, waiting with the rest of us. The funny thing is that waiting creates community. Even if you never speak to the person next to you, there's a shared understanding. We're in this together. Every sigh, every rustle of a page, every sideways glance at the clock is a collective acknowledgement that yes, time is passing. And yes, none of us has any idea what comes next. But we're here, side by side, in the same limbo. And here's the secret. Waiting doesn't have to feel like punishment. It can feel like permission. Permission to slow down, to let go, to accept that the next step will come when it comes. You don't need to pace the room. You don't need to demand answers. You can lean back in your chair, let your eyelids grow heavy, and recognize that the waiting room is as much the destination as whatever door you think will eventually open. So, let's sit here together, in this cosmic lobby. The lights buzz softly. The magazines are nonsense. The clock ticks without hurry. And you, wrapped in your blanket, are free to wait, to drift, to fall asleep, without needing to know who will eventually call your name. Now imagine this. You've been paying a gym membership for years. You went once, maybe twice, and spent most of the time awkwardly wiping down equipment you barely used. Each month, the money vanished from your account. And each month you thought, next week, I'll start. But then, one day, the gym closes permanently. Your membership is canceled. At first, you feel guilty. Shouldn't you be upset about the wasted money? But then, a wave of relief washes over you. The pressure is gone. You don't have to pretend anymore. This is what it's like when meaning gets canceled. The grand, cosmic, overarching meaning, with a capital M. The one that religions, philosophies, and ideologies have been trying to sell us for centuries, sometimes shuts down. Nietzsche said it when he declared God was dead. Camus said it when he looked at the absurdity of existence. Even modern thinkers echo it. The realization that life doesn't come pre-packaged with purpose. It's like showing up to the gym of existence and finding the doors locked with a sign that reads, "Sorry, no meaning today. Try creating your own." no meaning. Try creating your own. Has read, read, read. War, read, read. Wade, read. Word. At first, this realization can feel scary. If life has no pre-assigned meaning, what's the point of getting up in the morning? Why bother brushing your teeth if the cosmos doesn't care about dental hygiene? But here's where the humor comes in. Once you accept the cancellation, it's liberating. You no longer owe the universe a workout. You don't have to show up with your towel and water bottle to prove you're a meaningful human. You're free to do life your way. Think of all the stress that evaporates. If there's no cosmic scoreboard, then failing doesn't matter. That big presentation you stumbled through? Cancelled. That awkward conversation where you said, "You too." When the barista told you to enjoy your coffee? Cancelled. Even the pressure to have a life plan cancelled. You're not flunking existence. You're simply freed from a class that never had real exams. This is what Camus meant when he talked about embracing the absurd. Life may not have ultimate meaning, but that doesn't make it worthless. It makes it yours. Like discovering your gym closed and deciding to dance in your living room instead. You don't need someone else's treadmill. You can invent your own moves, even if they look ridiculous, especially if they look ridiculous. Of course, some people panic when meaning gets cancelled. They scramble to find a replacement, a new gym, a new ideology, a new rigid system that promises certainty. They rush to sign up for something, anything that gives them structure. But others take a different approach. They say, "You know what? I'll walk outside. I'll stretch. I'll breathe. I'll live without pretending the gym of cosmic purpose is the only place worth moving." And that's the secret gift in all this. When meaning is cancelled, the small, immediate moments matter more. A cup of tea becomes meaningful because you enjoy it. A laugh with a friend matters because it feels good, not because it advances humanity's eternal mission. Falling asleep right now matters, not because it gets you closer to enlightenment, but because it feels peaceful. So, as you lie here, imagine receiving that cancellation notice. At first, there's shock, but then there's relief. You're free. Free from the treadmill of destiny. Free from cosmic obligations. Free from the guilt of not doing enough. Tonight, you don't have to search for meaning. You can let it be cancelled, like that gym membership you never used anyway. And tomorrow? Well, tomorrow you might choose to make your own meaning. Or not. Both are acceptable. The cancellation is permanent, but so is the freedom it brings. And as that freedom washes over you now, you can finally unclench, let your eyelids fall heavy, and drift into sleep, knowing that even if the universe doesn't assign you a purpose, you can still dream your own. Close your eyes and picture yourself drifting in a vast, dark expanse. At first, it seems empty, just blackness stretching in every direction, like the universe has misplaced the stars. You might think this void should feel terrifying, the kind of place horror movies warn you about. But stay with me. Listen closely. The void isn't growling at you. It's not hurling asteroids or lurking monsters. It's just open, spacious, quiet. And in that quiet, something strange begins to settle in. The realization that nothingness is not a cage. It's a door. Philosophers who stared into this void often came back sounding either terrified or oddly liberated. Sartre, the French master of existential sighing, told us that when God doesn't hand out a pre-made instruction manual, we're left with radical freedom. Now, Sartre himself wasn't exactly the life of the party, unless the party theme was smoke cigarettes and debate despair. But his point was astonishing. The absence of built-in meaning doesn't leave you shackled. It leaves you free. Imagine going to a restaurant where the chef has already decided your meal. Every night, it's the same dish: boiled cabbage with a side of obligation. You can complain, but that's all you're getting. Now imagine walking into a different place where the menu is blank, and the waiter shrugs. Whatever you want, you can have it. At first, panic. Do I even know what I want? But then, liberation. You're not stuck with cabbage anymore. The void is that blank menu. It doesn't serve, but it lets you choose. Of course, freedom like this can feel overwhelming. You might be lying there in bed thinking, "Great, so I can do anything. But I also have no idea what to do." That's the paradox. Nothingness opens every door at once, and suddenly you're in an infinite hallway, wondering which room has snacks. But remember, the hallway doesn't demand you explore every door tonight. It just gives you permission to try one, to wander, to change your mind. Nietzsche would cheer you on from the sidelines. He believed that once the old gods and rigid systems crumbled, we could become creators of value ourselves. He called it becoming the Übermensch, not as in sprouting superpowers and flying off in a cape, but as in rising to the challenge of crafting your own path. Picture Nietzsche, mustache bristling proudly, holding out a paintbrush. "Here, the canvas is blank. Make something. Anything. Even if it's just doodles." The void is the canvas, and freedom is the brush. And yes, it's funny, because most of us, given endless freedom, immediately do something absurdly small. Instead of founding a new civilization, we scroll through memes. Instead of composing symphonies, we wonder if we should rearrange the couch. But that's the beauty of it. In the void, no act is too small to count. Freedom doesn't require grandeur. It only requires honesty, doing what you choose, not what you're told. Think of the void like outer space. Sure, it's infinite and possibly hostile, but astronauts float through it and describe a feeling called the overview effect. Seeing Earth small and fragile, realizing that borders and grudges shrink against the backdrop of stars. In that moment, fear melts into wonder. The void, properly understood, can give you that same effect. It doesn't crush you, it humbles you. It shows you that if everything is open, then your little choices, your laugh, your kindness, even your naps, shine all the brighter against the black. And isn't bedtime the perfect rehearsal for this freedom? You close your eyes and fall backward into nothingness. And instead of panicking, you surrender. You trust the void to catch you, to hold you while you drift. You don't demand a map of your dreams in advance. You just fall, and in falling, you're freer than you are when you're awake and trying to perform. So tonight, think of your blanket as a spaceship. You're wrapped tight, floating through endless dark, and instead of fearing the emptiness, you let it cradle you. The freedom of the void isn't a demand that you figure everything out. It's an invitation to rest, to wander, to dream. In a universe with no ultimate script, even closing your eyes is an act of freedom. And right now, that's more than enough. Now let's talk about that restless hum you sometimes feel when you lie down at night. You're tucked in, the room is dark, the world is quiet, and yet your mind begins auditioning every worry it's ever held, like anxious actors lining up for a play called Things That Could Go Wrong. This is existential anxiety, that nagging awareness that you're alive, but you don't know why, that your choices matter, but maybe they don't, that someday, inevitably, you will run out of time. Heavy stuff to bring to bed, right? But what if we rebranded it? What if anxiety could be cozy? After all, dread is just awareness, wearing a scary costume. Strip the costume away, and you find something tender, a reminder that you care. You wouldn't feel anxious if nothing mattered to you. Anxiety is proof of your investment in existence. It's like background music. Sure, it can be loud and dramatic, but it's also the soundtrack to a life that's alive. Philosophers like Kierkegaard talked about anxiety as the dizziness of freedom. Imagine standing on a high cliff. You can step forward, backward, sideways. You could leap into the air, though hopefully you won't. That dizzy feeling you get, that's freedom, reminding you it's there. And yes, it's unsettling, but it's also exhilarating. Anxiety, in this sense, is your mind stretching, acknowledging your possibilities. So how do we make it comfy? First, picture anxiety not as a roaring monster, but as a nervous little roommate bringing you tea. They mean well. They just spill a lot. They're jittery, pacing your room, saying, "What if you mess up tomorrow?" And you can smile and say, "Maybe I will, but for now, I'm resting." Treat anxiety like an over-eager pet. It jumps on your bed, wagging its tail, unaware that you were trying to sleep. Instead of yelling, you pat its head. Yes, yes, I see you. Good anxiety. Now sit quietly. Bedtime is the perfect place for this gentle shift. The blankets weigh you down just enough to remind you of gravity. Your breath slows, reminding you of your body's rhythm. Each inhale whispers, "Here." Each exhale sighs, "Now." Anxiety may buzz, but the body hums more deeply. And soon, the hum takes over, like a lullaby playing under the chatter. Even Camus, with his talk of absurdity, offers comfort here. He admitted life has no guaranteed meaning. But instead of despairing, he said we can rebel simply by living fully, by choosing joy, even without cosmic permission. Apply that to bedtime. Maybe you don't know the point of life. Maybe tomorrow holds chaos. But tonight, you choose the simple rebellion of rest. You pull the covers up and declare, "I will nap in defiance of the void." Anxiety shrugs, realizes it's been outplayed, and curls up beside you like a cat, and humor helps too. Think about how silly anxiety really island. It wants to plan for everything, but it can't even predict whether you'll dream about penguins or pizza. It imagines disasters, but half of them involve scenarios less likely than being hit by falling space junk. It is, in its way, a cosmic comedian, improvising wild scenarios just to keep busy. Once you see that, its bark loses its bite. So tonight, let the worries parade if they must. Watch them like balloons drifting by in a slow parade. Some are odd shapes, some are too loud, but none are permanent. They float on, leaving the quiet sky clear again. And in that clearing, you feel the soft weight of your body, the pillow against your head, the silence settling in like a friend who doesn't need to speak. Anxiety, transformed, becomes comfort. It's the proof that you're alive enough to care, awake enough to notice, but you don't need to wrestle it. You can tuck it in, let it curl at the foot of your bed, and drift off knowing that even dread, softened, can become a lullaby. Imagine the mountain is quiet. The stars are scattered across the sky, and the air is cool enough to sting your nose. At the bottom of the mountain, there's a man standing next to a giant boulder. You know the story. It's Sisyphus, the tragic figure from Greek mythology who was punished by the gods to push a rock uphill for eternity. Normally, you'd expect him to be sweaty, miserable, and groaning under the weight of eternal futility. But tonight, things are a little different. Tonight, Sisyphus is in pajamas. Yes, soft cotton pajamas, patterned with little moons and stars, and perhaps even a pair of fuzzy slippers that make a gentle flop-flop sound as he trudges. His hair is a little mussed, and he looks more like your sleepy neighbor taking out the trash than a mythological prisoner of fate. And suddenly, the punishment doesn't look quite so bleak. In fact, it looks almost cozy, like some strange bedtime ritual. This is exactly what Albert Camus meant when he said, "We must imagine Sisyphus happy." He wanted us to take the image of eternal struggle and flip it inside out. Instead of seeing despair in the endless cycle, see freedom. Instead of a curse, see the possibility of rebellion. The gods gave him a task that was supposed to crush his spirit. But what if he slips on his pajamas, adjusts his slippers, and says, "Fine, I'll make it my routine"? Think about how many routines you already do that don't mean anything in the grand sense. Making your bed, washing dishes, folding laundry that you'll only wear once before repeating the process. Life is full of Sisyphus moments. You push your little boulders up little hills every day. And yes, sometimes you groan, sometimes you sigh, sometimes you wonder why it never ends. But imagine approaching these tasks with the same pajama-clad spirit. You're not a doomed creature. You're an absurd hero. You face the futility, smile anyway, and slip into cozy cotton. Camus argued that the absurd arises when our hunger for meaning collides with the universe's silence. We want explanations, but the cosmos just stares back blankly, like a cat blinking at you. Sisyphus embodies this clash. He has a task that will never conclude, a goal that will always roll away. But instead of despairing, Camus imagines him finding joy in the rhythm. Each step, each push, becomes an act of defiance. "You wanted me to suffer," he tells the gods. "But look at me. I've turned it into my bedtime exercise routine, and the pajamas matter." They remind us that even in the heaviest labors, we can find softness. They show us that absurd heroes don't have to wear armor or carry swords. They can wear slippers. They can hum lullabies to themselves while trudging. They can find humor in the hopelessness. It's a little like brushing your teeth at night. You know you'll have to do it again tomorrow. You know it will never end, but you do it anyway. Not because it will bring eternal glory, but because it's your little rebellion against cavities, your tiny way of saying yes to life. And in that small act, you find a rhythm, a comfort, even a strange joy. So tonight, picture yourself as Sisyphus in pajamas. Whatever tasks or struggles you've carried today, whatever boulders rolled back down after you thought you'd conquered them, let them rest at the foot of the mountain. Tomorrow, you'll push again, but tonight, you can see the comedy of it all. The slippers flopping, the stars twinkling, the absurd hero who chooses to smile, even when the task itself never ends. Camus wanted us to see that happiness doesn't depend on victory. It depends on attitude. Sisyphus is happy not because the boulder stays put, but because he decides the effort itself is enough. And you, lying there in your own pajamas, can share in that attitude. The day may have felt absurd. Your efforts may have slipped away. But right now, you can rest in the rhythm, embrace the futility, and let yourself drift off knowing that sometimes the most heroic thing you can do is push in slippers, smile at the stars, and call it a night. Imagine walking into a room filled with objects. A gold crown, a paperclip, a half-eaten sandwich, and a pebble you found on the sidewalk. Normally, you'd rank them in your mind. Crown important, paperclip minor, sandwich questionable, pebble forgettable. That's how we usually live, with hierarchies of value. Some things matter more, some less, some not at all. But what if, in the gentle haze of bedtime philosophy, the crown and the pebble began to shine the same? What if everything, every crown, every crumb, every breath mattered equally? Or perhaps didn't matter at all? This is what philosophers call the flattening of value. When you realize there's no ultimate cosmic scoreboard, the distinctions start to blur. Suddenly, the big things, promotions, achievements, trophies don't loom quite so large. And the small things, the way your blanket feels on your toes, the sound of your breath, the sight of a moth fluttering past a lamppost, feel just as worthy of notice. At first, this can feel disorienting. We're trained to chase the big stuff, to prioritize crowns over pebbles. But the flattening is not a loss. It's a relief. It means you don't have to live in constant fear of missing the one, ultimate, cosmic opportunity. Because every moment is both ordinary and extraordinary. Every pebble is a crown. Every crown is just a pebble. Camus would nod here. If life is absurd, if it refuses to supply ultimate meaning, then our small acts of living become just as significant as the grand gestures. Laughing at a joke, sharing a meal, taking a nap, these become as valid as revolutions. When everything is leveled, you're free to savor the simple, and think how calming that is for bedtime. Maybe you didn't accomplish much today. Maybe you didn't conquer mountains or solve world problems. But you breathed. You ate something. You listened to a song that made you feel a flicker of joy. In the flattened field of value, those count as much as any crown. You are not behind. You are not failing. You are simply alive. And that is already complete. It's also funny, in a way. Imagine the universe as a judge at a talent show. One person comes out juggling flaming torches. Another person trips while tying their shoes. And the universe just claps politely for both, saying, "Lovely effort." That's flattening. No one gets a gold star, but no one is disqualified either. Everything counts, or nothing does. Either way, you're free. And notice how this perspective softens anxiety. If everything matters equally, then mistakes don't weigh so heavily. If nothing matters ultimately, then you're free to choose what matters to you personally. The crown is no more sacred than the pebble, which means you can pick up the pebble, roll it in your hand, and say, "This is enough for tonight." As you lie in bed, let this flattening wash over you. The day's triumphs and embarrassments level out. The unfinished to-do list shrinks to the size of a paperclip. The worries that felt mountainous become pebbles rolling gently down the hill. And in that evenness, there is rest. You don't have to rank your experiences. You don't have to justify your existence with crowns. You can close your eyes and let the field flatten, until all that remains is quiet, breathing, and the comfort of knowing that whether everything matters or nothing does, you are allowed to sleep. Imagine the universe leaning in close to whisper a joke. Its voice is the rustle of leaves, the hum of stars, the quiet drip of water in the sink. At 2 a.m, the universe opens its enormous mouth and delivers the punchline, and no one laughs. Not because it wasn't funny, but because no one understands it. That's nihilism in its comedic form. The cosmic joke nobody gets. It sounds gloomy at first. After all, no one likes being the only person at the table who doesn't understand the punchline. But in this case, everyone is left puzzled. We're all sitting around, blinking, shrugging, asking each other, "Did you get it?" And in that shared confusion, there's something oddly comforting. Philosophers like to dress this up in sophisticated language, talking about the absurd, the collapse of grand narratives, the silence of God. But if you strip it down, it's basically the same thing as standing in line at the grocery store and realizing the person in front of you is buying nothing but a head of lettuce and 12 cans of whipped cream. You don't know why. They don't know why. The cashier doesn't know why. But the very strangeness of it makes you smile. Nihilism often gets a reputation for being humorless, as if staring into the void requires a permanent frown and dramatic lighting. But humor is actually its best ally. Think about it. When nothing has inherent meaning, the whole stage of life becomes improv comedy. Every person, every event, every mishap, it's all unscripted. You spill coffee on your shirt before a meeting? In a world of cosmic significance, it's a tragedy. In a world without it, it's slapstick. The coffee becomes a punchline, the universe's way of reminding you not to take yourself so seriously. Albert Camus, who wrote endlessly about absurdity, didn't just preach rebellion against despair. He laughed at it. Imagine him watching people scramble to explain life's mysteries with convoluted philosophies, each one insisting they've decoded the great joke. Camus leans back, lights a cigarette, and says, "You're all trying too hard. Maybe the joke is that there isn't one." And here's the secret. That realization doesn't have to lead to despair. It can lead to a chuckle. If the universe is an endless stage with no script, then we are free to play our roles however we like. We're clowns, dancers, improvisers, not tragic actors, doomed to remember our lines. The cosmic joke might not have a punchline, but that means every laugh we create ourselves is just as valid as if the gods had written it. Think about laughter itself. It's one of the strangest human reactions. Air bursts out of us in choppy rhythms. Our eyes water, our stomachs ache, and yet it feels wonderful. Why? Biologists say it's a social bonding mechanism. Psychologists say it's a release of tension. Philosophers might say it's the body's rebellion against seriousness. But maybe laughter itself is our natural way of coping with the cosmic joke. We don't need to get the punchline. We just need to laugh anyway. Take bedtime, for instance. How many nights have you lain awake, rehashing conversations, or worrying about tomorrow, only to realize in the morning that none of it mattered? Those midnight worries are the classic setup to the cosmic joke. You sit in the dark thinking, "This is serious. This is important," and the universe snickers softly, as if to say, "You'll forget about it by lunchtime." And yes, humor can be dark. But that doesn't mean it's cruel. It's simply another way of seeing. Dostoevsky, whose characters wrestled with despair and salvation, filled his novels with humor, petty squabbles, ridiculous schemes, comic outbursts in the middle of tragedy. Why? Because he knew that even in the darkest abyss, people slip on banana peels. The ridiculous never stops intruding on the profound, and that's what makes it easier to fall asleep tonight. The cosmic joke nobody gets is still being told. But you don't need to solve it. You can smile at the absurdity of lying here, trying to assign meaning to every heartbeat, when maybe the joke is that you don't need to. You can let it go. You can chuckle, roll over, and drift into dreams, knowing that whether or not the joke has a punchline, you are free to laugh your way through the silence. Close your eyes. Feel the weight of your body sinking into the bed, the sheets pressing gently against your skin, the air moving slowly in and out of your lungs. This, right here, is rebellion. Not the fiery kind with banners and slogans, but the quiet, radical act of resting in a world that insists you should always be doing more. Camus talked about rebellion as choosing to live fully in spite of absurdity. Nietzsche roared about affirming life. Kierkegaard fretted about the leap of faith. But you? Tonight, your rebellion is simpler. You are saying no to the demand for endless productivity. No to the pressure of cosmic significance. No to the voice in your head that says you must earn your right to exist. You're saying yes to sleep. Think about how absurd that island. You spend a third of your life unconscious, drooling on pillows, dreaming about things that make no sense. Lions chasing you through a mall. Your high school math teacher suddenly becoming a traffic cop. Penguins speaking French. None of it advances your career. None of it solves the mystery of life. And yet, you keep doing it. Night after night. Sleep is the purest rebellion against the demand for meaning. In a world obsessed with doing, sleep is being. In a culture obsessed with answers, sleep is mystery. It's an act of surrender, yes, but also an act of defiance. You close your eyes and slip into nothingness, not because you've solved life, but because you don't need to. You allow yourself to be carried, to let go, to drift. The absurdity remains, but you step aside, refusing to wrestle with it until morning. Philosophers rarely talked about sleep, maybe because they were too busy staying up late writing books about despair. But if you read between the lines, it's there. Kierkegaard's dread is softened when you rest. Nietzsche's eternal recurrence is less terrifying when you're dreaming instead of overthinking. Even Camus' Sisyphus must have closed his eyes sometimes, leaning against his boulder, letting exhaustion turn into rest. That moment of sleep was his rebellion, his way of saying, "I'll push again tomorrow. Tonight, I do nothing." Oh, and sleep isn't passive. It's creative. Neuroscientists tell us the brain weaves memories during sleep, stitching together the fragments of our days. Artists wake from dreams with ideas. Scientists solve problems they couldn't crack while awake. Even if you don't invent anything groundbreaking, your brain is busy filing and tidying behind the scenes. Sleep is your brain's secret rebellion. You thought you were wasting time. I was reorganizing the cosmos of your thoughts. But the real rebellion isn't what sleep does for you. It's what it allows you to stop doing, to stop striving, to stop justifying, to stop proving. To rest is to say, even if the universe has no meaning, I will rest anyway. Even if tomorrow is uncertain, I will rest anyway. Even if my to-do list is unfinished, I will rest anyway. That's courage. That's defiance. And the comfort is that you don't have to try hard. Sleep doesn't demand an essay or a manifesto. It only asks that you close your eyes, loosen your grip, and let the silence take you. The rebellion is built into the act itself. By sleeping, you declare that your worth is not measured by your output. By sleeping, you step out of the cosmic debate, letting philosophers argue in the corner while you drift into dreams. So tonight, let yourself feel the rebellious joy of doing nothing. Imagine Camus sitting at the foot of your bed, nodding approvingly as you pull the covers tighter. Imagine Nietzsche smiling as you affirm life, not by shouting into the abyss, but by snoring into your pillow. Imagine the underground man muttering bitterly while you ignore him, proving that sometimes the truest act of rebellion is refusing to join the argument at all. You don't need to solve life tonight. You don't need to find meaning. You only need to rest. Sleep is your way of saying, the absurd can wait. Tonight, I'm off duty. And in that soft rebellion, you discover peace. Lie back for a moment and listen, not to this voice, but to the quiet space around it. There's a hum there, a kind of stillness that isn't exactly silence. Maybe you can hear the faint buzz of a refrigerator, or the low whoosh of air moving through a vent, or the heartbeat of the night outside your window. It's all so soft, it almost feels like music. And if you pay close attention, you realize it's not coming from any single source. It's the sound of the universe, not saying anything at all. It's the music of indifference. Philosophers have always tried to hear something in the silence. Ancient prophets claimed the cosmos whispered divine plans. Scientists today listen for radio waves from distant galaxies, hoping to pick up some interstellar broadcast. But what we get, most of the time, is nothing. A long, steady hush. And while that might seem frightening, there's another way to hear it. The universe isn't ignoring us because it's cruel. It simply doesn't have an agenda. It's like a cat who stares at you without judgment, then curls up and takes a nap. The quiet isn't hostility. It's neutrality. And neutrality, if you let yourself relax into it, is deeply soothing. Imagine a lullaby with no lyrics, no melody even, just a gentle hum that doesn't rise or fall, doesn't push or pull. That's what the universe is humming right now. Not a love song, not a battle cry, but a lullaby of impartial presence. Albert Camus, who thought long and hard about the absurd, knew this feeling well. He called it the unreasonable silence of the world. He saw people asking questions. Why am I here? What does this mean? What happens after I die? And the world responding with a calm, blank stare. No words, no answers, just that soft hush. And Camus, instead of screaming into the silence, leaned into it. He said, essentially, if the world won't give me meaning, I'll make my own. But before even getting to that act of rebellion, notice how he paused, how he sat with the silence first. The silence can be terrifying if you expect a reply. But once you accept that no reply is coming, it changes shape. It becomes background music. It becomes the white noise of existence, steady and reliable, like rain against a roof. You don't need the rain to explain itself. You just need it to fall. Right now, as you lie in your bed, you're surrounded by that silence. You don't have to solve it. You don't have to interpret it. You can simply listen. Imagine it filling the room like a slow tide, washing against the edges of your thoughts. The day's chaos grows faint under its steady rhythm. The arguments, the errands, the anxieties, they lose their sharpness in the face of that impartial quiet. And it's funny, in a way, because humans are so desperate for cosmic conversation. We write poetry, carve monuments, send satellites into space, all asking, "Hello, is anyone there?" And the universe replies with the same gentle shrug, "Nothing." But what a generous nothing, it island. That nothing means we aren't being graded. We aren't being micromanaged. We're free to nap, to dream, to live as we like. The silence is not indifference in the cruel sense. It's indifference in the way a blanket is indifferent. It wraps you without asking questions. Nietzsche once said, "In music, the passions enjoy themselves." If that's true, then in the music of cosmic indifference, what enjoys itself is rest. The steady hum of nothing is an invitation to stop trying so hard, to drift with the rhythm instead of fighting it, to close your eyes, let the silence fill your ears, and float. Think of it like the world's longest lullaby, a song without a beginning or end, without chorus or verse, just the soft hum of eternity. It doesn't rise dramatically because it doesn't need to. It doesn't fall to a close because it never stops. And that's exactly what makes it perfect for sleep. Tonight, you don't need to wait for the punchline of the universe. You can fall asleep, knowing the joke isn't cruel. It's simply wordless. The quiet will carry you. So, let the music of indifference play on. The stars are silent. The earth is spinning without commentary. The universe is humming its blank tune, and that tune is more than enough to guide you into dreams. Once upon a time, because every bedtime needs a story, there was a man named Friedrich Nietzsche. He had a mustache so impressive, it could probably qualify for its own passport. He spent his days writing about the collapse of old values, the death of God, and the terrifying freedom of existence. But tonight, he is tucked into bed, holding a candle against the dark, ready to tell you his story. Nietzsche begins. There was once a world where God is dead. He pauses, letting the weight of those words settle like the blanket on your chest. But instead of thundering, his voice softens. He explains that this death isn't tragic in the usual way. It's the fading of old certainties, the quiet realization that humans now must write their own scripts. In other words, it's scary. Yes, but it's also an opportunity. The story ends not with despair, but with a strange smile. You are free to dream your own ending. Nietzsche blows out his candle and rolls over, mustache tickling the pillow, whispering, "Good night." The next storyteller shuffles in, Fyodor Dostoevsky. He looks exhausted, as if he's been arguing with imaginary characters all day, which, in fact, he has. He opens his notebook and begins to read. There was once a man who lived underground. The man hated the world, hated himself, hated the sound of joy outside his window. He stayed awake, stewing in his spite. But Dostoevsky, in his deep, weary voice, makes the tale sound almost cozy. The underground room becomes a basement bedroom. The man's ranting becomes the muttering of a cranky neighbor you can safely ignore. "Sleep well," Dostoevsky says, closing the book. Don't worry, he's still down there, arguing with himself. Next comes Albert Camus, strolling in with a half-smile, carrying not a book, but a pebble. He holds it up and says, "Once upon a time there was a man named Sisyphus. You know the story. The boulder, the mountain, the eternal struggle." But Camus retells it like a lullaby. He imagines Sisyphus in pajamas, slippers flopping softly as he pushes the stone. He imagines the mountain glowing faintly in moonlight. And then Camus says the magic words, "We must imagine him happy." Suddenly, the punishment turns into rhythm, the futility into routine, and you, listening, feel lighter. Camus drops the pebble into your hand like a keepsake and whispers, "Sweet dreams." The stories go on. Kierkegaard, with his furrowed brow, tells a tale of a knight of faith who leaps into the unknown and lands softly. Like someone drifting into sleep, Schopenhauer appears, muttering that life is suffering, but somehow manages to turn it into a lullaby about persistence, as though each sigh were a rocking chair creaking in rhythm. Even Jean-Paul Sartre shows up, puffing his pipe and explaining that hell is other people. But if you close your door, hell goes away, and heaven can look like your own bed. These philosophers, who by daylight wrestled with despair, become strange bedtime companions by night. Their darkest thoughts, retold softly, are no longer terrifying. They are stories about human beings stumbling, fumbling, trying to make sense of the silence. And isn't that what every bedtime story is? A tale to make the night less scary, to remind us we're not alone in the dark. So tonight, imagine these thinkers as your narrators. Nietzsche tucks the blanket at your feet. Dostoevsky mutters from the corner. Camus smiles, setting the pebble on your nightstand. Each story ends not with despair, but with the soft promise: you can rest now. The void is still there, but it's quieter at night. The darkness is not a threat. It's a cradle, and as you drift off, you realize the greatest bedtime story nihilism tells is this: the world may not provide meaning, but you are free to close your eyes, to breathe, to sleep anyway. And in that act, you've written the coziest ending of all. You know the feeling. You're lying in bed, covers pulled tight. The day behind you. Maybe you accomplished a few things. Maybe not. Maybe you sent that important email. Maybe you forgot and decided. Future. You can handle it. And as you drift toward sleep, a thought might sneak in, that pesky thought about whether it all mattered. Did folding the laundry really matter? Did answering those texts? Did trudging through another day of repetitive tasks carry some grand cosmic weight? The truth, according to our nihilist bedtime story, is no, not really. And that, dear listener, is wonderful news. Pointlessness, so often painted as bleak, can actually feel like a blanket, a soft, heavy comforter that wraps around you and says, relax. None of this was required for eternity. Think of the philosophers who wrestled with futility. Schopenhauer was convinced life was suffering, driven by endless desires we could never fully satisfy. He walked around like the human version of a rain cloud. But even he admitted there were moments of respite, a piece of music, a work of art, a pause in striving. Camus, too, stared at the futility of existence and declared it absurd. Yet rather than despair, he found rebellion. Embrace it, he said. Lean into the struggle, even if it leads nowhere. But let's take their grand ideas and fold them down into something cozy. Futility isn't just a philosophical conclusion. It's a nightly reality. Every night, you undo the day's work. The bed you made is unmade. The dishes you cleaned are dirty again. The inbox you emptied is filling up while you sleep. If you step back far enough, you see that life is one long cycle of unmaking and remaking, folding and unfolding, washing and rewashing. And yet, somehow, that rhythm is soothing. Like waves on a shore, the futility itself becomes the lullaby. Imagine you're under a blanket that whispers, you don't need to justify yourself. Every task you completed or failed to complete today is already dissolving. Tomorrow will bring its own list. And the day after that, another. Pointlessness, when acknowledged, removes the pressure. If the universe isn't keeping score, then you don't have to either. And isn't there humor in it too? Think of Sisyphus pushing his rock again and again. The gods thought it was punishment. But what if he decided it was his workout routine? Well, it beats CrossFit, he mutters, adjusting his slippers. Futility, reframed, becomes just another hobby. He's not cursed. He's consistent. When you curl up tonight, you're embodying that spirit. Sleep itself is a kind of futility. You'll wake up tomorrow and do it all again. The same brushing of teeth, the same tying of shoes, the same cycle of effort. And yet, you don't resist it. You surrender. You let the futility wash over you like a tide, trusting it will bring you to shore again. The blanket of pointlessness is heavy in the best way, like those weighted blankets designed to calm anxiety. It presses down just enough to remind you you're here, that you don't need to be anywhere else. You can stop trying. You can stop proving. You can simply be wrapped in futility and find that it feels a lot like peace. Camus once wrote, "The struggle itself toward the heights is enough to fill a man's heart." Tonight, I'll adapt that. The futility itself is enough to fill your heart with rest. You don't need a purpose to close your eyes. You don't need a point to exhale. You can let the warm blanket of pointlessness tuck you in and carry you into dreams. Sleep is strange, isn't it? You lie down, close your eyes, and suddenly you're somewhere else. You're at a grocery store. Except it's also your childhood home. And the cashier is your old math teacher. And for some reason, you're riding a unicycle. None of it makes sense. The dream doesn't follow a plot. It doesn't even try. And yet, when you wake, you realize it was beautiful in its own peculiar way. This is the perfect metaphor for existence. We want life to follow a story, to have a clear beginning, middle, and end, with satisfying arcs and resolutions. But most of the time, it's a jumble. Days bleed into each other. Threads begin and never tie off. People appear, play a role, and vanish. And if you try to force it into a neat plot, you end up frustrated. But if you accept the dream logic of life, its randomness, its improvisation, its lack of ultimate structure, you can begin to see its beauty. Camus would nod knowingly here. He told us life is absurd, because we crave meaning, but the world refuses to supply it. Sartre, too, spoke of existence preceding essence, meaning we are here first, and the story comes later, if it comes at all. To live is not to follow a script, but to improvise. And if you've ever watched improv comedy, you know it can be hilarious, awkward, messy, and still wonderful. Dreams remind us that plot is optional. You don't wake from a dream and say, well, that was pointless because it didn't have a 3-act structure. You wake and marvel at its strangeness. Maybe you laugh. Maybe you scratch your head. Maybe you jot it down, hoping to remember. But you rarely dismiss it entirely. Dreams matter not because they make sense, but because they happened. And so, with life, you don't need to weave it into a coherent narrative to rest in its beauty. The conversation you had today, the taste of your lunch, the walk you took, the sigh you released, all of it is dreamlike. And that's enough. Think of how liberating that island. You're not obligated to make your life a novel. You can let it be a collection of dream fragments. A scene here, a laugh there, a fleeting connection, a random memory. Like dreams, they fade. But that doesn't erase their worth. Their worth was in the moment, in the experience itself. And here's the comforting part for tonight. Just as you don't control your dreams, you don't need to control every twist of life. You can surrender. You can close your eyes and drift into whatever comes, knowing that beauty doesn't require explanation. Dreams prove it every night. So, as you settle deeper into the pillow, imagine yourself stepping onto the stage of a dream with no script. Let the scenes unfold. However strange, however plotless, trust that even in the nonsense there is wonder. And when morning comes, you'll have lived another dream fragment of life itself. Existence may be meaningless in the grand cosmic sense, but like dreaming, it is luminous in the moment. And tonight, you get to practice that truth in the most direct way, by dreaming without a plot and finding it beautiful anyway. Picture Friedrich Nietzsche, that stern-faced philosopher with the thunderous mustache, lying down for a nap. It seems almost impossible, doesn't it? A man who wrote about eternal recurrence and the death of God surely didn't spend much time curled under a blanket, dozing peacefully. And yet, if anyone deserved a nap, it was Nietzsche. His mind was always buzzing, pacing, roaring. But even roaring lions eventually need to close their eyes. So, how would Nietzsche nap? Probably not in the way you or I do. He wouldn't just flop onto the couch and drift off. He'd turn the nap into a cosmic statement. He'd say, "To sleep is to embrace the eternal recurrence, to affirm life so fully that I will gladly dream the same dream forever." And then, mustache twitching, he'd roll over and snore in defiance of the abyss. For you, though, the lesson is simpler. Napping like Nietzsche means treating rest not as a shameful break, but as an act of affirmation. The modern world often guilts us about sleep. We glorify busyness, brag about how little rest we get, wear exhaustion like a badge. But Nietzsche would scoff at that. He'd say, "You claim to affirm life, and yet you deny yourself the joy of rest? Hypocrites." He would insist that sleep is not laziness. It's a loud yes to existence, the same way laughter or art is a yes. To close your eyes in the middle of the day is to declare, "I am alive, I deserve to dream, and I will not apologize for it." There's humor in this too. Imagine Nietzsche writing his great book, "Thus Spoke Zarathustra," and suddenly yawning mid-sentence. He closes his notebook, muttering, "Thus spoke my pillow," and collapses onto the bed. His dreams, perhaps, are filled with dramatic visions of endless mountains, eternal suns, and occasionally the annoyance of someone waking him too early. But beyond the humor, there's a serious insight. Nietzsche believed in creating your own values, in rejecting the imposed guilt of old systems. So why not apply that to sleep? Why let the world tell you that naps are indulgent? Why let guilt creep in when you close your eyes at noon? Create your own code. Naps are sacred. They are small sanctuaries, moments of eternity folded into the day. To nap like Nietzsche is to nap boldly. No half apologies. No nervous checking of the clock. You close your eyes, as if you were carving a statue, composing a symphony, writing a manifesto. Your rest is your rebellion. Your nap is your philosophy. And as you lie there tonight, drifting toward dreams, you can feel that same boldness. Your nap is not a weakness. It's not an accident. It's a deliberate choice, a life-affirming act of freedom. Close your eyes with conviction, snore with dignity, dream with defiance. That's how Nietzsche would do it. The laundry basket is full. The dishes are stacked in the sink. The emails sit unanswered, glaring at you from the corner of your mind. These are the daily obligations that gnaw at us. They whisper, "Do me now. Finish me. Earn your right to rest." And often, we obey. We scrub. We fold. We reply, convincing ourselves that only after the chores are done will we deserve peace. But Nietzsche wrote a book called Beyond Good and Evil. And tonight, we're going beyond good and evil and beyond chores. Nietzsche's idea was that morality, as people usually think of it, is too rigid. It traps us in categories, forces us into boxes of good and bad. He wanted us to transcend those categories, to create our own values. So let's try the same with chores. Society says a sink full of dishes is bad and an empty, sparkling kitchen is good. But who decided that? The sink didn't. The universe didn't. These are values imposed on us. And while clean dishes have their uses, they are not cosmic imperatives. So imagine drifting beyond the binary. In this space, dishes are neither good nor bad. Laundry is neither virtuous nor shameful. The inbox is not a moral battlefield. They are just objects, neutral, waiting. You can attend to them later. You can let them be. Right now, your value is not defined by whether you folded socks. This is freeing, isn't it? Because the tyranny of chores is really the tyranny of meaning. We act as though each undone task weighs on our worth. But lying here, under your blanket, you can feel those weights lift. The universe isn't keeping score. If you sleep now, you don't lose points. If you drift away, the dishes will wait, patient, unchanged, while you dream. And there's humor in this too. Picture Nietzsche himself confronted with a messy room. He glares at the laundry pile as though it were a rival philosopher. He raises his fist and declares, "You have no inherent moral weight." Then, with a dramatic flourish, he walks out, leaving the socks where they are. Nietzsche, after all, wasn't one to bow to arbitrary rules. So tonight, you can be just as bold. Drift beyond the false morality of chores. Step outside the cage of obligation. Your worth is not tied to productivity. Your soul is not diminished by unfolded clothes. In sleep, you go beyond all of it, beyond good, beyond evil, beyond the endless cycle of doing. Close your eyes. Feel the chores fall away like leaves drifting from a tree. You are not bound by them. You are free to rest. And in that rest, you reclaim your dignity. Settle deeper into your bed now. Feel the fabric beneath your hands, the pillow cradling your head, the weight of the blanket pressing you softly into the mattress. You've done enough thinking for one day. Enough striving. Enough worrying about whether you're doing it right. Now is the time for something quieter. Not dramatic. Not earth-shattering. Just quiet. Imagine yourself floating in space. Not the terrifying kind of floating they show in movies, with oxygen alarms beeping and astronauts spinning helplessly. This is the peaceful version. The stars are scattered like glitter across a velvet background, and you're drifting among them like a feather. No sound, no weight, no urgency. Just cosmic quiet. The funny thing about space is that it looks hostile in pictures but is really, at least conceptually, the ultimate lullaby. There's no chatter, no traffic, no phones buzzing. Out there, silence stretches in every direction. And for once, you don't have to fill it. You can let it wrap you, like warm water filling a bath. Philosophers used to argue about silence. Some said it meant emptiness. Others said it meant possibility. Sartre would probably furrow his brow and call it nothingness, the background hum of existence. Camus would shrug and say it's absurd, but then suggest you learn to enjoy it anyway. Nietzsche might add that the silence is a stage on which you perform your own meaning. But tonight, you don't have to analyze it. Tonight, you get to listen to it, as if the quiet itself were a song written just for you. Floating in cosmic quiet is about surrender. You've been steering all day. Conversations, tasks, choices, even the tiny decision of whether to check your phone again. Now, you let go of the wheel. You drift. The universe doesn't need you to manage it. The stars twinkle whether or not you're awake. The earth spins on its axis whether or not you reply to that email. This is your permission slip to stop trying. Notice how your body follows. Your breath slows. Your shoulders drop. Even your thoughts, so eager to chatter, start speaking more softly. Instead of shouting, they whisper. Instead of racing, they stroll. And eventually, like tired children, they curl up and sleep too. And here's where the humor sneaks in. Because when you imagine yourself floating in cosmic quiet, you might picture yourself looking dignified, like some serene philosopher astronaut. But the truth is, you're in pajamas, possibly with mismatched socks, maybe drooling a little. And that's perfect. The universe doesn't demand grace. It doesn't hand out awards for elegance. It just holds you in its silence, pajama drool and all. Think of it like lying in a giant cradle. The stars are the mobile above you, spinning slowly. The blackness is the blanket, and the silence is the rocking motion. Gentle, steady, infinite. You don't need to contribute anything. You don't need to solve the silence. All you need to do is float. And as you float, you might notice that the silence isn't empty after all. There's the soft sound of your breath, the faint beating of your heart, maybe the distant hum of your room. These are your companions, tiny reminders that even in quiet, life continues. The silence is not the absence of meaning, but the canvas on which small, comforting sounds appear. This is how you drift toward full drowsiness, by surrendering to the cosmic quiet, trusting it to carry you, not rushing, not forcing, just letting the silence seep into you, until your body is as still as the stars, until your thoughts are as gentle as moonlight, until sleep feels less like falling and more like floating. Here we are, at the edge of the night, at the end of the story, and at the soft threshold of sleep. You've traveled through thoughts of futility, freedom, absurdity, and silence. You've laughed with philosophers in slippers and heard bedtime stories from men who once wrestled with despair. And now, there is only one thing left to say: good night. But this isn't the ordinary good night you say when you click off the lamp. This is a good night to nothingness itself, a farewell to the endless questions, the endless striving, the endless demand to explain what it all means. Tonight, you don't need to answer. Tonight, you let nothingness tuck you in. Picture it like this. The room is dark, but not frightening. It's warm, soft, womb-like. Nothingness seeps into the corners, not as a void to fear, but as a pillow for the soul. You can lay your head on it. You can breathe into it. You can say, "Thank you for being empty, so I don't have to be full." Philosophers often trembled before nothingness. Heidegger wrote of anxiety, Kierkegaard of dread, Sartre of nausea. They stared into the abyss and saw terror. But you, tonight, can stare into it and see peace. Because nothingness doesn't threaten you while you sleep. It holds you. It asks nothing. It demands nothing. It allows you to dissolve for a while, to stop being anything in particular. Good night. Nothingness means letting go. Letting go of the day's identity. The worker, the parent, the student, the worrier, the planner. All of those roles fall away. You are simply a body lying in a bed, a mind drifting into dreams, a being wrapped in blankness. And isn't that the most comforting thing? To be allowed to vanish for a little while, without consequence, without guilt. And here's where humor slips in, even at the end. Imagine nothingness as a sleepy concierge standing at the door of your dreams. You walk up, carrying all your baggage, the to-do lists, the regrets, the embarrassing moments from 10 years ago. The concierge shakes his head and says, "No luggage allowed." He takes it all, piles it behind the desk, and waves you through empty-handed. That's what sleep is. Stepping into nothingness with nothing. So you say it softly now, in your mind. Good night to your worries. Good night to your questions. Good night to the noise. Good night to the struggle. Good night, nothingness. And as the words fade, so do you. You drift not into answers, but into rest. You dissolve into the silence, the darkness, the dream, and when you wake, tomorrow will be waiting. The philosophers, the chores, the absurd jokes of existence. But for now, nothingness is your bedfellow, your lullaby, your peace, and now, it's time to let go. Sleep well, dream gently, and know that the universe is perfectly fine without you figuring it all out tonight. If you're already drifting, stay cozy and rest deeply. But if you're still awake, curious mind buzzing, You can click on one of the 2 videos glowing on the screen to continue your journey. And if you'd like more nights like this, more philosophy wrapped in calm, more humor laced into the quiet, make sure to subscribe. Sweet dreams, my friend. Until next time, good night.